first stop on our singing cowboy adventure takes us to Victorville, a pleasant little town right off Interstate 15, a couple of hours driving time out of L.A. Our exact destination was impossible to miss because right out front there was this huge fiberglass palomino rearing up on its hind legs. And that in itself should tip you off as to who our first singing cowboy is. He's been riding into our lives on the giant silver screen and on television for years. The king of cowboys, Roy Rogers, with his ever-faithful horse, Trigger, and his ever-lovely leading lady, Dale. Starting back in the late 1930s, Roy was in 87 musical westerns, becoming the #1 box office star in all westerns for 12 straight years. And in 35 of those movies, Roy was teamed up with Dale Evans, his real-life wife. Yep, Roy and Dale and Trigger were quite a combination, and quickly became much more than just movie stars. They became part of the American scene, with literally millions of loyal fans. And today, many of those loyal fans make the pilgrimage to the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum in Victorville, a museum that is literally bulging with memorabilia. 33,000 square feet, filled with endless glass cases of photographs, awards, and trophies. Their exhibits, for example, filled with nothing but clothing Roy and Dale wore in the movies. There's saddles and chaps. There's Roy's first gun holster, cars they've owned over the years, Roy's first pair of boots, bronzed of course, Roy's first guitar, Roy's pocket knife collection, Roy's baby picture, a shot of Roy and Dale eating snow, pictures of Dale's mom and dad, and a picture of Roy kissing a pigeon. I think you've got the idea. This place has a little bit of everything in it.
Dad saved everything from little pins that people would give him to handkerchiefs to hats to I mean, this is we added it up one day, and I think we have something like 170,000 different small items in here, not counting the big ones. So I mean, we have an awful lot in here, and it is, like you say, early attic. That's basically what this is. We have everything that Dad and Mom ever owned in here.
Now, what's the idea here? Because I feel like I'm in their presence as we're standing
Right.
here. There's Dale and there's Roy,
That's right.
and he's got the guitar. And
Roy hasn't moved in 15 years. Been in that same spot. Now these were made. They took a rubber. Mom said it was the most unexhilarating experience in her life. They came and they poured latex over their face. Made these molds, and Mom had to keep her mouth closed, which was tough for a Texan, for at least 20 minutes for this stuff to set up. And then they took and put matched the eyes up and the glass eyes. But these are actual impressions of their face that were taken, and they're nice, but if you watch them for too long, and you start walking across, their eyes will follow you over here, and then they'll follow you back here. But there are size-wise and stature-wise, they're exact copies of Mom and Dad. So it is kind of bizarre, isn't it?
Now, it's one thing to see latex figures of Roy and Dale. It's another to actually meet them in person. But that's exactly what happened next, as Roy Rogers and Dale Evans officially welcomed me to their museum and started to give me the 50-cent tour. I say started because we'd only walked about 15 feet before we were literally surrounded by their fans. Fans from all over the country who wanted autographs and pictures and a chance to meet their favorite movie stars. And I gotta tell you, it was something to see because there was this immediate rapport between Roy and Dale and their fans. It felt more like a family reunion than anything else, like old friends getting together. It was really nice. But after a while, we had to break away from the crowd because Roy and Dale wanted to personally show me the most popular exhibit in the entire museum. Now here we are in the inner sanctum here.
This is my favorite room.
This is what everybody
This
wants to
horse
see.
was without a doubt the greatest horse that ever came along. He just never made a mistake. We did about 200 pictures, including all of our television shows with this horse and personal appearances and stuff like that. And he would just iron. He was kind. We got pictures with kids on his back clear from his tail clear up to his ears. I have 7 kids on him, I think, someplace in one of these pictures in the museum. But there was, without a doubt, the greatest horse that ever came along.
Did you have any idea when the association started that Trigger was going to grow to be this megastar that he ended up being?
Well, you think of a cowboy, you have to think of horses too, you know. So when I got ready to make my first picture, the studio got together and they invited all the stables that rented horses to the studios, and they had what they called their cast horses, which were the pretty horses. So they were invited to bring them out to the studio so I could pick one out. So I think there was 7 or 8 horses out there that day, and I went out, and I believe Trigger was the 3rd one I got on. I never looked at the rest of them.
You knew right away.
Well, he could spin on a dime either way and give you 9 cents change. He was a
he was a smart horse. I mean, extra smart.
Yeah, you could teach him anything. It's just about he did everything but talk, you know, one of those things. And it was just fabulous. And I was very, just really blessed by having a horse. Because nobody thinks of Roy Rogers unless they think of Trigger.
Well, now I don't even know how to ask this question, but were you ever jealous of Trigger?
Not really. I used
You
to
notice
say,
how she said that.
not really.
really.
When I first started making pictures with Roy and Trigger and Gabby Hayes and the Sons of the Pioneers all got billing above me, you know. But I finally graduated up to Roy Rogers and Trigger and Dale Evans.
But you never got top billing over Trigger.
Oh no, I never really wanted it. He was a sweet disposition, beautiful horse. You know, of all the parades that we ever did, Roy on Trigger and me on my little horse back there on Buttermilk. I never saw him bite anybody or kick at anybody, and the kids would just, you know, pull his tail, and he was an amazing horse.
Now, what went into the decision to have Trigger and Buttermilk mounted like this and put in the museum?
That was his decision.
Even before I ever had a museum, I've been to several of them, and I saw what beautiful job they did with mounting horses and all kinds of animals. But Trigger, he was so fabulous that I just loved him. He was like one of the family. I couldn't bury him. And so I took him down there, and they did this beautiful job with the position you see him in a lot of the
How did you decide to have him up like
because
this?
he was such, he could rear and almost walk on his hind legs.
So many of Roy's pictures, you know, of him and Trigger, he was rearing like this with Roy on him.
Did Trigger know that he was a star? Did he have a bearing about him and know?
I think he did.
I think he did. Well, I know he knew that the minute that camera went on, the camera could be 50 yards away from it, and I'd be sitting over there on him talking to somebody, and he'd be half asleep, you know, with his head hanging down.
Yeah.
And that camera would go on, and he was ready.
Really?
Yes, sir.
The minute they
exactly.
yelled, roll them, you know, roll them, and then you hear the buzz, the ears would come up like that. Buttermilk was the same way. They were very camera-wise.
Yeah.
Wow.
They knew, I don't know what, I'm sure they didn't know they were making pictures, but they knew that something was happening as they liked to do it, because they would do the scene close to the camera, then we'd take off, and so there's always anticipating when's it going to be, you know.
How does it make you feel to...
Well, I wish he was alive, just like, you know, like we lose one of our children, but when we lost Trigger, it's almost like losing one of the family, you know. And here he is. People can see him from now on.
Well, he's the #1 attraction here.
Yeah.
Well, pretty much. I mean, people actually, he was almost as important as Roy.
Yeah.
You know, to the kids. They loved this horse.
I told Dale when I died, just skin me out and put me up on Trigger.
Come on now.
I could smile down at the folks
You
from
can
now
forget me. I'm not that stage struck.
I don't know what to say.
Well, if you lose your sense of humor, you've lost everything.
Yeah.
Old Trigger hasn't got a pretty figure, but he's nice and kind and gentle as a horse can be. He can carry us double, it isn't any trouble, and we're needing company, so how's about a ride for free? Give up? Oh, come on.
The sign over the entrance to the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum proudly reads, "This is our life." Now maybe that's why it seems so right that an old friend, so much a part of their lives, has been given the place of honor inside. Probably the most famous and definitely the most loved horse of all time, a golden palomino named Trigger.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds if we're together?
Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather.
Happy trails to you till we meet again. That's for Trigger and Bullet and Mom and I.
And buttermilk.
Buttermilk.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
has been
Okay,
wonderful.
thank you.
Nice to be with you.
Very much.
God bless you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
God bless you a lot.
Flamingo, like a flame in the sky, flying over the island to my lover nearby. Flamingo.
It was a big hit song back in 1941. Flamingo, sung by Herb Jeffries with the Duke Ellington Orchestra. In fact, because of this hit song, Herb became well known almost overnight and went on to a long and successful singing career. But there's another part of the Herb Jeffries singing career that's not quite as familiar to most people.
With my rope and my saddle and my horse and my gun, I'm a happy cowboy. So when the day...
Meet Herb Jeffries, the happy cowboy. Actually, he's the singing cowboy and a movie star on top of that. Because back in 1937 and 38, the powers that be in Hollywood decided it would be a good idea to make some westerns with all-black cast. And Herb was chosen to star in the 4 movies that were actually shot and distributed around the country to small black movie theaters.
How's the ammunition holding out?
There's only 2 left.
You're welcome.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, too.
Today, Herb lives in Los Angeles, but still travels around the world singing with big bands. His Western movie career, however, ended with those 4 movies back in the late 30s. Movies that are now an obscure but very important part of history. And they definitely bring back fond memories for Herb.
When we made this film, this one particularly, it had already been done maybe 3 or 4 years ago, the same script by Caucasian actors. And so when Mr. Kahn made this, he didn't write the script. There was an old script he found laying around that they had produced at Gower Gulch some years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years. And by changing the characters and everything, but you know, there's only about 7 stories to
Any Western.
any Western film anyway, you know.
What's the big idea, fella? If you didn't have that gun, I'd show you.
Now, did you have extras doing the riding and the roping and the fighting for you?
No, we didn't. We couldn't afford those things in those days. No, you went out there and you did all your own stunts. You did all your own fight scenes. And as a matter of fact, these pictures were made only in about 7 days. They were called quickies. So we did them in about 7 days, and we were grinding them out. I mean, we would chase the sun over the hill. And we worked and sometimes until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then still get up and catch that early morning fog, get out there in the morning and do the chase shots. So it was a tough grind, but it was a lot of fun, and I was young enough to be able to handle that kind of abuse.
Oh, look. Now there's
that's
always
my leading
the
lady.
pretty girl,
yeah,
right?
That's my leading lady, Artie. Artie Young, her name is.
Now, most cowboy movies, like I don't think Gene Autry was ever seen kissing the leading lady. He never actually had any romantic...
Exactly.
Was it the same here?
Same thing, exactly. No, because we spoil things with kids. Kids think that's much. And they want to know that there's a connection between a male and female. But we were very careful not to smoke, and very careful that when we shot a guy, he was always a villain. And we're very careful about how we did that too. You know, we didn't do it brutally. You know, it's very and though that was a formula for most Western pictures.
Now, did you always get the girl?
Always, always.
Not a dime in my jeans. I can't buy pork and beans. Now I know what misery means. Oh, got the payday blues. Got the payday blues.
We have a little dancing in there too. See?
Well, now that wouldn't have happened in a white movie as much, would it? I mean,
no, not really. I don't think I ever saw a cowboy picture where you had a tap dancer in it.
exactly.
Yeah, but you see, tap dancers were very popular in Harlem, and also tap dancing was very popular in the Negro neighborhoods throughout the United States.
So that was a concession that was made to the audience that was going to be seeing it.
Right, right.
Were you looking for someone? Well, to be truthful, I was looking for you.
Well, let me tell you something. I went up to a ranch in Santa Ynez and spent about 3 months up there with some very rough wranglers who took me through the mill, and they said,
They made a cowboy out of you.
Make a cowboy out of you, we're going to kill you. That's exactly and not only that, but I had a chance to hang out with these guys and get a little bit of cowboy jargon, you know.
Like?
Well, you know, you got to talk like a cowboy if you're going to be a cowboy. Talk about roping and talking about all these different things you're going to do with your gun. You got to have that twang, you see, because otherwise you ain't going to be no cowboy. Motion pictures, what makes them successful is good entertainment. And we had good entertainment. You know, we had dancing in it and singing in it, and then we had nice storyline, pretty girls, and lots of action. Riding, you know, and noise, shooting off the blanks, you know.
Did you see yourself as like the black Roy Rogers?
Yes, exactly. Our formula was exactly the same formula they used. We were singing cowboys. We were full-length feature pictures. We used the same formula they did. We used the same moral principles that they used. And we wanted to have our children feel exactly the same way. We wanted them to look up to these men as good citizens who were out doing the right thing. With my rope and my saddle and my horse and my gun, I'm a happy cowboy. Though I travel with my cattle and I'm always on the run, I'm a happy cowboy.
So when the day is ending with a setting sun, our happy cowboys were